This is the Dallas Morning News.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of SportsDay Rangers for 2026. And I'm John Blake.
I remain Evan Grant, and I wish everybody a Happy New Year. John, I assume, does the same.
And we hope everybody had a happy holiday season. The start of spring training now is about 3 weeks away. Camp's opening early this year because of the WBC, and Rangers pitchers and catchers haven't opened on February 10th, correct?
Yes, the Super Bowl is February 8th. I leave on February 9th for the desert, and the pitchers and catchers will join me on the 10th, and the first full squad workout is February 15th. It's amazing. I think the season opens on the 26th this year?
Yes, in Philadelphia.
March 26th.
Yep.
In Philly.
And you also have a new job as well. I read on the paper the other day about you have really started to be an actual official food journalist in searching for the best burgers.
John has given me crap for 30 years about me being an international food journalist.
Not just me.
It was a long-running joke for him, but
he used to get us into restaurants though by using that.
I never did that, but you wanted me to. But yeah, I've started a new project. It's about me and my big mouth. We're going to search for the best burgers in Dallas and then expand to hopefully more of North Texas. We ran the first edition of my favorite burgers over the past 30 years just the other day on dallasnews.com. It's still up there. Got great recommendations from people to kind of follow up, and that's what I'm hoping for is more engagement. I just don't need your engagement because you don't have very good taste in food. Well,
I'm not a big cheeseburger point at this juncture in my life. I eat a lot of fish and chicken, so if you ever get into that biz, I'll have some suggestions for you.
Bottom of the ninth, bases loaded. Here comes Jimmy Dale from Baker Brothers Plumbing, AC, and Electrical.
Thanks, Chuck. When your home pitches curveballs, Baker Brothers knocks it out of the park.
Home run, Baker Brothers. Incredible.
As the official home service partner of your Texas Rangers, we're offering $300 off a tank or tankless water heater.
Another winning call. Visit callbakernow.com or dial 214-342-1171 today.
Baker Brothers.
Great service.
But moving on from the gastronomic department, we'll talk about the 2026 Rangers. And since we last talked, the Rangers have made significant additions to their bullpen, have added a second catcher. But, Evan, is there work still to be done here?
Yeah, there's work still to be done. I don't think that the Rangers feel like it is a complete roster. I think they feel pretty good about the work that they've done, but I think there's still some areas that could use some addressing in on the pitching side. I hesitate to say whether it's the bullpen or the rotation because I think depending on how they make moves, John, it could impact the other. So they need more pitching. I think Chris Young is aware of that. It goes to show in the last 48 hours, they've signed Jacob Junis to a $4 million deal, and they re-signed Josh Spores to a minor league deal with an excellent opportunity to make the roster. And I think between now and spring training, and maybe even through the camp, they will continue to add where they feel like they can find some values.
Well, right now the rotation is lacking significant depth. I mean, if you went in
experience, it's lacking experience. Look, it's top heavy in a good way with Nathan Eovaldi and Jacob deGrom. And Nathan's going to be on the show this afternoon, kind of burying the lead here a little bit. But Nathan's going to join us on the show, and we'll talk about that. But after that, you've got Jack Leiter, who's going to be in his second full year. Had a great first full season in the big leagues. Really took huge steps. But there is still not a long track record. I expect that Jack's going to continue to improve. Beyond him now, if you don't add somebody else, you're looking at Jacob Latz and Kumar Rocker to round out your rotation. Jacob had, I think, 8 starts last year.
Right.
The last reliever who was as boisterous about moving to the starting rotation was C.J. Wilson, another lefty, and he made a pretty good transition of the rotation for some pretty good teams. I think Jacob is equally as focused on that, and I think he's got the ability to do that. But there's also still need in the bullpen, and if the Rangers are able to acquire a starter, maybe they want Jacob to move back to the bullpen and pitch either in a multi-inning role or potentially in high leverage roles, or both. And then you get to Kumar Rocker. And look, we're talking about the third pick in the draft. We're talking about a guy with immense talent, but he's at the stage that Jack Leiter was a year ago going into spring training. Kumar's got to earn it. In a lot of ways, his path has been similar to Jack. Before Jack really made some steps forward, the Rangers kind of took him out of the minor league rotation, put him in like a development program, kind of a restart. That's how Kumar ended last season, was in that kind of development program. So I think there are high hopes that he'll make steps forward. But even with that, John, we're talking about 5 starting pitchers. There's some guys in the minor leagues, don't have any experience in the big leagues. There's some guys in the minor leagues, but it's hard. You need a 9, 10, maybe even a 12-man
Well, look at
pool.
what Boston has right now in terms of starting depth. And
100%.
you're right. You don't go 5 starters anymore for 162 games.
No, it's not about a rotation. It's about a pool. I've said that for years. And it's hard for me to find 8 to 10 legitimate options for the Rangers to fill out that pool over the course of the season.
And you've got a lot of guys out there still, and very much like the Rangers did last year with Patrick Corbin. You'll probably will see a move like that, I would guess, closer to camp, depending on who's still out there when the bell rings.
I think so. I also think that there's been some time since the most of the big starters have come off the market to readjust a little bit and look at some potential trade possibilities. Now, I don't know that the Rangers have a great deal of depth in the minor league system beyond Sebastian Walcott and maybe Caden Scarborough, the pitcher who's really fast on the rise.
Who was named in a top 100 on Baseball America's top 100 today.
Yes, and should really shoot up that list if he's healthy this year, if he stays healthy, I should say. But there are some teams. You look at teams that are still continuing to tear down or restart. Teams like Colorado, teams like St. Louis and Washington that have new baseball operations heads and maybe looking to churn. And so maybe there's opportunity to match up. Each of those teams has a lefty who would be attractive. Lefties seem to do better in this ballpark. And so maybe there's a match somewhere for a Liberator or a Kyle Freeland or, maybe even MacKenzie Gore.
Now, we'll talk about the bullpen just in a minute, but let's turn to the lineup a little bit. You talked to Josh Smith, who said he had a bone to pick with you about him faltering physically in the second half of the season. He said it was more mental. But he's had 2 really good first halves, and is he a guy that can play 145 games and have production at second base?
Yeah, I think he's shown he can play 145 games. The question is whether he can keep up the production. And listen, Josh's explanations about the mental fatigue that kind of caught up with him are very normal for young players. The easy narrative is you look at Josh, you look at a little guy, and you say, does he have, a reservoir of stuff when he starts to lose weight? But I think on the mental side, he talked about getting to a point in the second half where, he sees a little bit of a slide and then he starts to tinker or to fix, and that inevitably leads to more downward spiral. And before long, you can't get out of it. You're trying so many different things and you're worried about your numbers and all of that. And I think he spent some time this offseason from a mental perspective trying to get himself where he will focus more on just trusting the process as the season goes along, not worrying so much about what he has to do to maintain the numbers. And look, what the media does sometimes matters, sometimes doesn't. But yeah, he's going to hear about the second half fades. He knows that, and so he's going to have to do a good job of compartmentalizing that, putting that out of his mind, and that's always the challenge. That's the thing that you can't, as a scout, ever really estimate is how well is a guy going to block out all the mental challenges. So that's the question for me is not whether Josh Smith will be the second baseman. I know the Rangers have said that there will be competition at second base, but look, he's been an everyday player for the last 2 years. I think the question is whether he can hold it all year. And if the Rangers need to make some adjustments to say, try and keep him, if they think that there's some physical breakdown, and you look at the numbers against fastballs and high velocity, and it really shows that in the second half there was a big drop-off. If the Rangers think that there are some things they can do to give him some periodic breaks to rest him better and maybe just rule out the possibility that there was any physical fatigue.
One other note on the lineup. What, at this point, the outfield with Nimmo, with Langford, with Evan Carter, Haggerty's in the mix, Michael Hellman is in the mix. How does that going to shake out in terms of who's going to play where at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest conversation is who ends up in center field. And I think there are cases to be made for both Langford and for Carter. You know, on the Langford side, on the Carter side, I think the Rangers believe that Evan Carter is the better suited player for center field, just in general. But then you add all the layers of complications, right? Evan Carter is probably not going to play against right-handers very often, if at all. So when he doesn't, then what are you going to do? Are you going to put Michael Hellman in center field, or are you going to ask Wyatt Langford to move from left field now to center field?
Right.
I don't think it's quote-unquote fair, given that Wyatt Langford is a core player here, and given that he has been as productive as any player in the lineup, for him to have to move positions. I think he deserves at this point in time, especially if he's going to be a core player moving forward, he deserves a position that he plays every day, and he just has to focus on that. I think he's a capable center fielder. I think he can do it. And so if you are thinking more about how do you make sure that you manage Evan Carter and how do you handle that platoon, I think the best way is that Carter plays left, Langford plays center, Nimmo plays right. And then whether you're moving Sam Haggerty in to play for Carter or Michael Hellman or I don't know.
You have Ezekiel. I mean, you've
got
options,
right-handed
right.
options.
You got options.
The question for me now is, I thought at the end of the season Alejandro Osuna really improved. But now you look at the corner outfield spots, you've got a left-handed hitter in Nimmo in right field, and you've got a left-handed hitter in Carter in left field if that's what happens. So where exactly does Osuna fit in terms of everyday play or contributing on this roster? That's something I think the Rangers have to work through, and it could ultimately result in Alejandro starting the season in the minor leagues. I'd like to see him in the big leagues just based on what I saw at the end of the year, but listen, you also need to get him everyday at bats too.
Let's just talk about the bullpen real quickly here. I mean, we'll talk about these things obviously in future podcasts as spring training develops. Pretty much a whole new cast out there. You're banking on Cole Winn to kind of take from what he did last year and take it to the next step. Closer role still pretty much up in the air, though. You have Chris Martin, who you've re-signed. Can Alexis Diaz come back? Spring training is going to figure out a lot of things and how that bullpen mix.
I don't know that it's going to
together.
solve a lot of things because the last 2 years we've seen these certain guys perform incredibly during spring training, and the minute the season starts, then they go downhill and you've got to shuffle. I do think the one thing that presents a real complication for me, or a real challenge, I should say, is look, you turned over the bullpen entirely last year, and you did a great job. You know, that group of guys who relatively didn't have long track records, certainly not as closers, that group overperformed. Sean Armstrong was a great find. Jacob Webb pitched a lot of innings out of that bullpen.
Milner was a workhorse.
Milner was a workhorse,
Yep.
yes, and was really deaf on left-handers. Now you're betting on that all over again. Right. And the one thing I've brought up with some Rangers folks in conversations is, this is a game of percentages. You guys worry, you think about percentages and metrics and data, and the data is you basically hit a lottery ticket on the bullpen last year with everybody overperforming.
You could also say that for 24, though, with Yates and Robertson.
100%.
Two guys that were not coming off, and they hit pretty well too. But you're right. When does it kind of balance itself out?
But on the other hand, let's also point out, I think that one thing that the Rangers haven't gotten enough credit for over the past 5 years is the way they have plumbed free agent markets, trade markets, waiver wires for the middle to bottom tier, and gotten productive players, productive pitchers out of that. So they've identified some things that stand out. Alexis Diaz, if he can get his velocity back, could be a huge, plus. He's the one guy who has significant closer experience. Yep. If Chris Martin stays healthy this year, he was very effective when he was healthy last year.
And then you've got the young guys in the mix,
And that's
too.
the one place where
Cavello and guys like that who have had a taste of the big leagues now.
And listen, if you look at the 40, I'm having to put my glasses on to look at the 40 man, right? And we haven't mentioned Junice, who had a really good year last year with Cleveland, but you've got Teodo, who's a real power arm on the back end of the 40. He's going to have to throw more strikes. Mark Church has a bit of major league experience, was hurt for much of last year, but he's got the ability to pitch late innings with power stuff.
You've got the Rule 5 guy, Baumler from Baltimore, who could figure into the mix. It's tough. And then you got Spores, like you mentioned earlier, if he could come back.
And listen, beyond the 40, I think that if somebody like Isaac Tiger, who can throw triple digits, he could move really fast this year when he's healthy. So there are some options in the bullpen. I think you have more options in the bullpen to give you help from the minor league system than you do at other spots. Let's put it that way.
Well, anyway, this will be a work in progress. The Rangers have got 3-4 weeks, and again, they've signed guys in spring training before, so the roster will probably be a work in progress throughout the spring.
It will, and I mean, I'll start doing projected rosters because those are real favorites with readers. I'll start doing projected rosters, probably within the next week, and it's going to be a real challenging exercise because I expect that there are going to be continued additions, whether they're non-roster guys or a trade or a short-term late add. But it is going to be a roster that's a work in progress going forward, particularly on the pitching side.
So we're happy to have Nathan Eovaldi as our guest here on our first episode of Sports Day Rangers this year. 3 great years with Texas. We was 11-2 last year. Was having a remarkable season when he went out with that rotator cuff injury in August. Returns as the veteran leader and on a starting staff that's a little unsettled. And we'll hear from him ahead of spring training coming up next. So our guest for our first edition of Sports Day Rangers in 2026 is Rangers right-hander Nathan Eovaldi. 11-3 with a 1.73 ERA last year. Evan was having a season for the ages.
Phenomenal numbers.
Before the injuries hit. And 2 stats that I have that you might not be aware of. You know how I like to use stats. Winning percentage with the Rangers of .686 now, 35-16, the highest in team history for a pitcher with over 400 innings, and a 3.14 ERA, second highest to Bert Blyleven's 2.74 among pitchers with 400 innings. So 3 outstanding seasons, over 76 starts and almost 450 innings.
And I think before we get into that, I think that when you add in the postseason numbers,
right,
the Rangers' winning percentage when you're on the mound is like 700. It's ridiculous. And I think that's not just a testament to the pitcher that you are, but how much confidence this team has when you're on the mound. But that said, you weren't on the mound at the end of last year. So give us an update on where things stand with the recovery from the hernia surgery and where you're at in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm feeling great. Surgery, everything went well. I mean, the first few weeks it was a grind, not being able to move around the house very much and not being able to interact with the kids, things like that. I feel like just the everyday basis of things was pretty tough, but I'm feeling much better now. I'm running, doing everything, training like I normally would. I mean, no restrictions whatsoever. I don't expect to have any limitations coming into spring training. I've been throwing multiple bullpens, and my arm feels great, body feels great, and I'm ready for the season to get going.
So, how many pitches are you up to in bullpens?
I don't want to say a number there.
Okay.
I'll get myself in trouble doing that. But we working with Tiegs this offseason and Lucky and everybody trying to get on the same page of having. The main thing was not to rush the process. We want to make sure that we healed up right where we needed to. They gave me the slowest time on. My body, my arm, everything's feeling great.
So you mentioned Jordan Tiegs. Mike Maddox has obviously moved on to the Angels.
Mm-hmm.
What does that do to you, or what is going to be the change in the pitching staff now with Dave Bush and Jordan Tiegs kind of taking that main role?
Yeah, I mean, having Mike around was awesome. I feel like he kind of set that tone in 23 when he came over. There was one way to doing things, and it was his way. And I felt like he adapted with us really well. And We, ended up winning a World Series with him, and we had great numbers. I feel like with him as a pitching coach, but Tiegs has always been around, and same with Bushy. I feel like Mike's has done a great job of like kind of mentoring those guys and helping them out along the way. And it's not just Mike's role. It wasn't just his role anymore. They were all doing scouting reports, and I feel like having those three work on the scouting reports together kind of gave us like that, the ultimate plan of attack. Losing Mike now, but they've been able to work with Mike long enough, and same with myself, DeGrom. Some of the younger guys too. We were able to learn a lot from him, and I think with Tiegs now taking the reins of everything, we're going to be in a really good spot. I feel like Tiegs has a really good way of communicating with the pitchers in terms of mechanics, pitch shapes, pitch recognitions, things like that, and I feel like that's a big step right now with where the game's heading and everything, and the plan of attack I think is still going to be the same. I think with having Bushy and Tiegs both still here, having a good game plan to go out there and attack. Same with Higgy, and then now adding Jansen behind the plate as well. I think we're still going to be in a good spot when it comes in terms of pitching.
And you've got a new manager too, in Skip Schumacher. How much have you had a chance to be around him?
To be around him, none really. I felt like he kind of stayed in the shadows when Boch was here. You would see him around in the club or like kind of in the kitchen, but I mean, I didn't feel like he was overstepping any boundaries or anything like that. He'd be around, easy to talk to, very approachable. But I'm excited to being able to be around him more and to learn from him. The guys that have had him in the past or have been teammates with him have spoken extremely highly of him and just saying like he's got a unique way of bringing out the best in all the guys. And I think that's one of the big things that we need being so young now, with a lot of the guys and, needing them to be able to step up and help the team to have that good success. We need somebody like Skip that's going to be able to come out and bring the best out of those guys and, encourage them and challenge them in the right ways for them to go out there and help us out, help us win these big ball games.
The way I always described Mike to people was that he was a great game planner. But listen, you and Jacob are excellent at that. I don't know how much you got from the game planning. I think you're very open to all of that. But the whole idea of this question is, like, what is Jordan Tiegs' strongest suit? Like, what will he really add in that role that you think he'll make his mark as the pitching coach?
I definitely learned a lot from Mike when it came to the scouting reports. He helped me out a lot. Again, I'm very open to trying to continue to learn and adapt and find new ways to have success. And I feel like Mike really helped me do that. But with Tiegs, I feel like he's kind of specializes in all of it. I don't know if there's one particular thing that he's like extremely good at. I know I talked to him a lot when it came to mechanics. I was constantly searching, trying to find like what really made me feel good and being able to repeat those mechanics. And, when it comes to all the stat cast numbers, things like that, he knows how to read those and communicate them well to the guys. I don't really know how to read them. Like, when they're telling you, oh, you're loading in your hips really well. It's like, I don't know. That's just how I pitch, but they can kind of look back at the numbers where I had my best game or best velocities, best success and say, hey, I was doing it then and I'm not doing it now and what I can do to try to make that better. So I think when it comes to mechanics, Tiegs is really good, but also the pitch shape. There's been times where he's helped me out with certain pitches and pitch shapes, trying to, make them easier for me to be able to repeat. And same with a lot of other guys. You've seen a lot of the success that Leiter's had and Rocker. They've both worked with Tiegs a lot coming up. And I think now that, we've got a lot more younger arms coming up through the system. You got Cole Wynn and Jacob Latz, both, making a huge impact for us last year. And then we're going to need that same kind of success out of them this year. I think he's going to be a big part of that.
And I've said this, and I want to get into a question about Leiter in a second, but I've said that last year, Tiegs had that background with all the young pitchers, right? Mm-hmm. All the guys that Nate just mentioned, Latz, Leiter, Kamar to some extent, Cole Wynn, and I think that was a real strong suit, the way the pitching staff was, the pitching coaching staff was set up. But you also had a role, I think, in Jack and Jacob, and they were both very open about the steps that they took last year and crediting you. Nate, you and I have had this conversation before. I think you're as invested in teammates as any teammate I've ever been around. How did you approach Jack and Latz and Wynn? And what kind of input did you give them? And you also they have to be willing to receive it. So I'm interested in the dynamic there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like a lot of the times in the off season, like I kind of just go back to, my family. But then when the season starts, it's like the second family, right? You want to see all those young guys have success and try to fast track them through the things that you've already experienced. You've had your ups and downs throughout your career, and just making sure that they don't, when they do struggle, it's not as long of a period as some guys might have. I feel like a lot of the times too, they're kind of easy to, ask me questions about the splitter since my splitter's so good. They'll ask me questions, how I hold it, what I'm thinking about when I'm throwing it, and then it just kind of opens the door for everything. But I don't know. It comes to that time when we're spending time with each other in spring training, watching bullpens. Asking. I enjoy watching bullpens. I enjoy trying to learn from them too. What they're trying to do. How they. I don't know. It just being around each other a lot. Especially during the games, during the seasons, again, spring training, we have all that free time with each other, and just trying to figure out, how they're thinking. And then I feel like a lot of the times with the young guys coming up, they're so dependent on the TrackMan and Rapsodo and things like that, and trying to get their minds back onto attacking the hitters. I've seen a lot of guys, they'll throw a bad pitch and ask what the numbers are on that pitch shape. And it's like, you should never want to throw that pitch again because you missed off the plate so bad. You know what I mean? It's like I try to bottle up the good feelings that I've had when I'm out there on the mound, the good pitches, let them know like, hey, that splitter felt really good. Can we mark that one on the TrackMan? That way I can go back and look at that pitch shape. But again, I think it's just talking in the dugout, watching the game. They're all open to my suggestions, and I feel like there's not just one way. It's not just my way of pitching. DeGrom and I are both very different pitchers, and um, we have different ways of kind of going out there and attacking. I feel like a lot of the times I'm more, technical with a lot of the things, and DeGrom kind of goes out there and just throws through the target. So he's got a simple way of doing things, and I think I might have a complicating way of doing things sometimes.
And this may sound, but the stretch you were in last year from late June through July and everything, how did that, how do you, it was amazing to watch, Evan, every time you went out, Nate. How do you feel when you're going through a stretch like that, when you are so dominant pretty much every time? And I know it's one start at a time, but looking back on it now from last season, how did it feel?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't feel very good when I was out there. I felt like, my outings, I just ended up making big pitches when I needed to. There were some of those games like where everything was working and I was locked in from the first inning on. But I felt like a lot of the times last year we would score first and I would allow them to be right back in the game. And then I kind of get frustrated with myself when I'm out there and really got to bear down and try to make those pitches go deep into the ball games. But again, I kind of go back to the scouting reports. I feel like as a pitcher, I should never back myself into a corner where I feel like I have to locate this pitch perfectly. The hitters are always hunting a fastball and, trying to do damage now on pretty much every swing they take, they're trying to do big damage. So as long as I have a good pitch mix and I'm out there, pitching instead of just throwing, I feel like I can get myself out of some of those big jams. And I think that was a lot to my success last year was being able to trust my secondary pitches and a lot of those counts and, get the big double play ball when I needed to.
Listen, last thing for me, Nathan. We've talked about the pitching staff and how well that worked together, and obviously there was a lot written last year about the offense and how it didn't work well. And in the offseason, there were changes made. There's culture being talked about, and all of that. My explanation to people has been that this is always on the offensive side. It's always been a business-like team. And when you're successful, that's a compliment. When you're not, it becomes a detriment. What was your read on what this team's clubhouse chemistry was like in 25 and 24 versus 23?
I feel like we kind of have those waves. In 23 at the beginning of the season, the clubhouse vibes were amazing, right? But we're out there winning a lot of ball games, and we're not really losing too many. I know August, the clubhouse vibes weren't very good. We went on that tough stretch and had a lot of guys that were injured, but we had the right guys come back and pick us up when we needed to, and we were able to get hot at the right time. 24, I felt like we had a lot of expectations on ourselves. Obviously we had just come off winning the World Series, and we wanted to get back to doing that and kind of have that chip on your shoulders. And then when you don't start performing the way that you're capable of, you start to put more pressure on yourself, and you didn't do as well. I think it all comes down to the coaching staff, everybody that you have a part of it, right? Like there was no pointing fingers Last year, it's not like we were saying, the pitching's great and the offense isn't, and vice versa. A lot of the times you ride those waves where pitching will be good and the offense will go through their struggles, and then you have the times where the offense is banging, and we're not allowing we're allowing way too many runs. We're losing those close ball games. You got to find a way to come out on top every night, and I think a lot of the times that's usually what happens with the clubhouse vibes. Obviously adding a few more faces, and we've lost a lot of our key members, especially the ones that we had in 23 with Marcus, Jonah, Dolly, all leaving now and going to different teams, and the big trades and stuff. But I feel like that's the importance of having spring training, right? You got new coaching staffs, you got new players, you got new guys joining the team, and we got to make that, get on that same page in spring training. And I feel like a lot of the times that starts day one, and we kind of just build off of everything that we're able to get going from spring and roll into the season. I know starting out in Philly, it's going to be a tough opening series. It's going to be cold. It's going to be a great, Phillies lineup. We just got to go out there and make sure that we're ready from day one of the season. We want to make sure that we start out on top to give ourselves a little wiggle room if we need it towards the end of the season to be where we want to be.
Well, we're going to miss you this weekend. Fan Fest, as you know, Evan, we're expecting Armageddon here in Dallas, and a little snow as always. I'm from New England, so this doesn't bother me that much. But Don, we're in Friendswood. He says he's expecting snow as well. So We're going to miss you coming up and accepting the Co-Pitcher of the Year award. We'll have to give that out, I guess, during the season now.
We'll give it out. We'll give him half the award and half to Jacob.
That's what I told him. I said, we're basically right there in the clubhouse. We can put it above, split our lockers and put it up there and share it.
There you go. Lastly, have you been to any good escape rooms this winter?
That's we haven't really done too many. I think we've only done 4 this year. We took my son the other day, and it was fun. He helped out. We were able to escape. I think we actually had 17 seconds to get out of there, but we've just been so busy. We haven't really made time to go out there and do any of the escape rooms yet, but definitely on the list. I'd like to do a few more before we actually have to head out to spring training.
Your fascination with escape rooms just fascinates me. I don't know why, but it just does.
And Berger called me the other day asking, he said, "Are we going to go and do some escape rooms in spring training?" I said, I might go with him.
Yeah, we just can't tell anybody since Becca gets upset if you do them without her.
Exactly. You're already getting me in trouble.
I know. Listen, this has been great, Nate, and thanks a lot.
We thank Nathan Eovaldi for getting on with us. It has been, his 3 years here have been pretty amazing, really, Evan. In terms of, Rangers have, in terms of starting pitchers, and if you look at the body of work.
That's the real shame of last year is John, you've been here since 1984, right? And the storyline year after year has been the same. And the Rangers got starting pitching last year like they have never had. And a big factor in that was Nathan Eovaldi and obviously a Jacob deGrom. I just want to again say, I'm not holding any secrets back here, but you just get feels from being around players. And there are a handful of players that I've dealt with over 30 plus years in baseball that are good teammates, that are that make others better.
Right.
Michael Young was one of those guys for me.
Exactly.
Nathan is that guy here. He makes other guys better, and I really do think it has an impact on how well this team plays when he's on the mound.
And it's important when you have young starters to have a guy like that, and deGrom brings a lot, too, from hhis experience at the top of the rotation.
And it is a good mix, because sometimes they need to hear the simple message of just throw it to the glove, and sometimes they need, okay, you want to throw your splitter, you want your arm here, or what? This is how I do it. Let's have a conversation.
No, it's but speaking of starters, so for the always popular Archives in Arlington is coming back for a second season. I know we don't need any applause, but
we don't have the sound effects, John.
Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about Rangers Hall of Famers coming off the Tuesday's National Baseball Hall of Fame announcement. And 2 former Rangers are going into the Hall of Fame, in Carlos Beltran and Andruw Jones.
I don't know that I like that's kind of the I don't know that that's the headline that I'd put on their entrance to the Hall of Fame.
No, but they're center fielders, which is fairly unique in the last 40 years. Center fielders going and being elected to the Hall of Fame. Kirby Puckett and Ken Griffey Jr., the only 2 previous in that span. But they were both DHs here. And I thought what we would do is we're going to look back at the 11. There are now 11 former Rangers who wore a Texas Rangers uniform as a player in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. 10 elected by the BBWA Brethren, 1 by the Veterans Committee. And I'm going to kind of rank them a little bit. And if we'll talk a little bit about it. I think we can start with the top 4. I don't think there's any, and we don't even need to really go into them. And Ivan Rodriguez, Adrian Beltran, Nolan Ryan, and Ferguson Jenkins.
But I think you need to rank them so that we can upset them.
Okay, well, I had them ranked Pudge, Adrian, and Nolan just in terms of contributions to the franchise. And it is a fine line in some of those cases. All 3 numbers are retired. They all had a huge impact. And it came down for me, seniority, tenure with the team, and position they played.
Yeah.
And in Pudge's and Adrian's case, 2 of the top elite in their position. Nolan, a great pitcher,
and great contributions to this organization.
Right.
But
and,
yeah, I
and
think
Fergie
that's...
Jenkins again pitched here 6 years, won 93 games, had a remarkable 74 season. Didn't go in as a Ranger, obviously. Won 20 games 6 times with the Cubs. But those 4 were easy. So then I get to number 5, and I'm going with Vladimir Guerrero at number 5, and he only played here 1 year, 2018, but
2010.
2010. He was inducted in 2018, played here in 2010. Hit 300, drove in 115 runs, led the team in RBIs, finished 11th in the MVP voting that year, was the DH of the year, and really filled a position for that 2010 team that the Rangers needed. It was a void in the offense, and he complemented the rest of that power lineup very well.
Well, I had him 6. I had Bert Blyleven 5th, but I think, again, that might be a fine line. And if you take their contributions, look, certainly on a single-year basis, Vlad's contributions were enormous for that team in so many ways. So no argument there.
I'm going with Gaylord Perry as the 6th. Basically, he had a 48-43 record here. He has the second lowest. Well, now he has he still has his ERA is 3.26. 12 shutouts, 55 appearances. Again, I go with him as 6, and then I have Blyleven next in line at number 7. Blyleven pitched here part of 76, all of 77, 500 record, 23-23, 274 ERA. He has the lowest ERA in club history among any pitcher with 400 or more career innings. He also has the 3rd most shutouts with 11, and he pitched a no-hitter in his last start. So that's my top 7. And then who do you have at number 8?
I guess I have Rich Gossage at number 8.
Well, I have Harold Baines because he played here a little longer than Rich Gossage. And Harold Baines, the only one of the 11 who was selected by the Veterans Committee, right? It was not voted by the writers. Harold Baines was an interesting one for the Rangers. They traded for him basically at the trade deadline in 1989. We traded Sammy Sosa and Wilson Alvarez and Scott Fletcher for him. The 43rd President of the United States laments this trade to this day in terms of the future of the ball club. The Rangers in 1989 thought they had a chance to win the division. Alas, they didn't. Oakland won. And Baines was never comfortable here. Bobby Valentine was the manager, and Harold, it was a huge thing for the White Sox, trading one of their iconic players. They actually retired his number the first time we went to Chicago in 1989 after the trade. He actually had his number retired.
As an active
player by Jerry Reinsdorf. But Bobby Valentine, the first time we faced a left-hander with Harold, having been on the team, he did not play Harold, did not go over well. He hit 288 over 153 games, but couldn't wait to get out of here.
So you have Baines 8.
At the end of August in 1990. I have Gossage 9th. Played here 1 year, 44 games in 1991. Had one save that year. It was for Nolan Ryan game. I remember we made a big deal out of it because he had 300 saves plus, and Nolan had 300 wins. Gossage's biggest claim to fame was he got into a fight with Bobby Valentine in the hotel bar in Oakland, at the old Oakland Hilton there when we used to stay in Oakland. And the team was very happy at that point because Bobby at that point had
kind of worn out.
The veterans were not happy with him. And then I have the two new Hall of Famers, and I'm going to let you. I mean, you're an Andruw Jones guy. You grew up as a Braves fan. He was here 1 year, 2009, mostly as a DH. Started 53 games that year as the DH, the most of the Rangers. Hit .214, 17 homers, and 43 RBIs. Why is Andruw Jones a Hall of Famer, though?
Well, for me, I voted for Torrey Hunter as well, largely on this. Look, I think that with a lot of these players that are on the ballot right now, it's, this argument, Hall of Very Good or Hall of Fame. I don't really make that much of a distinction. I think that these guys all deserve recognition one way or another. For me, Andruw Jones won a decade's worth of Gold Gloves in center field. That kind of accomplishment is the thing that puts him over the top for me. He was also a Rookie of the Year, had multiple top 10 MVP finishes. But look, he was the preeminent center fielder in the big leagues for a decade. My point on Torrey Hunter was, as a center fielder, he won 9 Gold Gloves. And so I felt like if I was going to make that vote for Andruw, I also had to vote for Torrey. And there are other situations where there are some similarities. Look, I've voted for Mark Burley for the Hall of Fame the last couple of years based on innings and things. But if you look at numbers, Cole Hamels, who I didn't vote for this year, his first year on the ballot, is very comparable and in some ways, a little bit better than Burley. So for me, Burley's innings year in and year out were things that made him a Hall of Famer. And then you add, again, the historic accomplishments. 2 no-hitters, one of them a perfect game. Maybe my bias is that I saw one of the no-hitters against the Rangers in 2007, but I think I looked this up there. I think there are 8 or 9 pitchers who have multiple no-hitters with at least one perfect game. All of them, with the exception of Mark Burley, are in the Hall of Fame. So you can go one way or another. Is he a Hall of Very Good? Yes. Is he a Hall of Famer? Don't know. His vote totals have come up a little bit each year, but that's where I stand on that. Andruw Jones made contributions here in 2009 to this team that was starting to emerge as a young, talented team, and I think he played a role in that for Ron Washington and with some younger players. Carlos Beltran, who was 11th on our list, again, he's got great numbers. He falls short of the 3,000 hit thing, but other than that, he is distinctively a Hall of Famer.
He's just not a Hall of Famer based on his time in Texas. And he played in 52 games here, hit .280, 7 homers, 29 RBIs. He was acquired at the deadline from the New York Yankees in 2016. Prince Fielder went into that season as the primary DH. He got hurt. His career basically ended because of his neck. And John Daniels went out and got Carlos Beltran. And it was a real lift to the lineup at that point. He went out and got Beltran. He went out and got Jonathan Lucroy. And that team went on, won 95 games, and it just kind of went off the end in the playoffs against Toronto, where Beltran was only 2 for 11. And it's really hard, but, I mean, in terms of contributions to the Rangers, that's why Beltran is 11th. Yeah, 52 games.
He played less than half a season. So I get that. And you don't think, you talk about random guys in old baseball jerseys. You see somebody wearing a Beltran jersey in Texas. It's a rarity.
Right. But we'll have the 2 more Rangers. We'll have Texas AL on their plaques next July at the Hall of Fame induction in Cooperstown. And after that, maybe Cole Hamels will be next. He's the only first-time player on the ballot that is advancing. Everybody else got less than 5%. So what do you think? I mean, Hamels had a really good career.
When I think in retrospect, this is the first year in a while that I haven't voted for 10 players, and I think in retrospect there was room for Cole Hamels on my ballot. And when I look at the numbers again, when I compare him with the other guys on this ballot that I did vote for, Burley and Andy Pettit, I think Cole certainly matches up with them. Also Felix, who I did vote for the first time. So I think next year, I'm looking at the possibility of four starting pitchers from the 2015 era.
And another Ranger manager will go pretty much slam dunk into the Hall of Fame in 2027 for Bruce Bochy, and
providing he doesn't manage in 2027.
Right. Provided that, and he will join Ted Williams and Whitey Herzog as Ranger managers to be in the Hall of Fame, which is pretty amazing. But anyway, so that's going to do it for this first episode of 2026 on Sports Day Rangers. And thank you for joining us.
I'm headed to Surprise on February 9th. I'll be there. We'll have new episodes between now and February 9th. We'll have episodes all spring for you. Hopefully we're going to involve more current players this year. We're also going to try and involve some great or interesting moments from Rangers history episodes with some of the characters that were involved in those. And so we're hoping that we'll have a great season with y'all. And John?
And as always, you can follow us on social media. I'm at Ranger Blake, and he's at Evan_P_Grant. And we'll talk to you all soon.